I grew up in a very conservative household, and energy work wasn't really a thing that we ever talked about. No one ever said this, but the impression I got as a child was it was sketchy. Like it couldn't be trusted. So it was never something that I looked into. So I remember even as like a young teen, I remember getting these feelings that I was supposed to do something great in this world and that I would have an impact. And I didn't know what it would be. I just felt it like, okay, I'm going to do great things. And so about 4 years ago, my life just felt like nothing was wrong. I have a wonderful marriage. I have wonderful children. We're not homeless, we have all the necessities and everything, but I just felt like everything in my life was so mediocre. I wasn't the super mom I wanted to be, the super wife I wanted to be, the super leader in my business that I wanted to be. Like it just got to a point that I was just so frustrated. And I remember exactly where I was when I was kind of like pouring my heart out to God and was just kind of like treading water. I was just like barely keeping it together. All of a sudden, I realized that subconsciously, I had never consciously said it out loud. It was that day that I subconsciously realized that I was asking, what's wrong with me? Because I was seeing other people seeming to do amazing things. And I knew inside that I could and that I was going to, but I couldn't seem to get it out. So I just figured something must be like, I must be broken, something must be wrong with me. I needed to be fixed. And I had this thought like drop into my mind so powerfully. And it said, that's the wrong question. I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
And I realized that the impression that came was there was nothing wrong with me. So that's why the heavens seemed so silent. I was always praying for help and to be able to accomplish these big things. And I kept failing and failing. And so, which just made me feel like I must not be worthy of help. But in that moment, I had this understanding that I wasn't broken. And so that's why I never got an answer about how to be fixed. If nothing's wrong with me, then why am I not reaching these things? Like clearly there's something I'm missing. So what more do I need to understand? And then another thought dropped in. It was like a gong, like, that's the right question. What more do I need to understand? And so I just became really open at that point because I think before that, I thought I had all the tools I needed. And so since it wasn't working, then the problem must be me. And so once I realized that there wasn't anything wrong with me, then I became open to, oh, there must be other tools then, or there must be more I can understand that I'm not understanding right now. So I became very, very open. And it was probably about a month of like kind of just pondering on that question. What more do I need to know? And kind of like letting go of old belief, some old beliefs. It takes more than a month to let go of all the old beliefs, but just kind of opening myself up. And then things just started to come to me. Like I didn't go searching for anything, but someone would show up and share a little nugget of something. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like this makes so much sense. This is why. And I would like integrate that. And then something else would show up and I'd be like, oh, that plus this. Okay, that really makes sense. And then I'd integrate that, and then something else would show up. Just that openness and what more do I need to know? Things just started coming, and it came when I was ready, like one thing, and I would integrate, and then another thing, and I would integrate, and then another thing. And energy work was some of those things were energy work. And I was hesitant with some of them. They would show up, and I'd be like, I don't know about this, but then it would show up from another source and I'd be like, okay, so, and I don't feel like any of it has gone against any of the good that I had before. It's not like, oh, you have to throw out everything you were ever raised with. That's not the case. I feel like I still have the foundation and the good that I had in the beginning, but I've just been open and all these other things have just built on top of it. So the first thing that I did with her was a love solve session with my husband. So we met with Christine and did a love solve thing. It was like a 2-day thing that we did with her, and that was massive. It helped me break through. I didn't realize how much guilt, how much guilt I had, and part of that I think was from my upbringing. I'm a perfectionist personality type anyway. And so if it's not enough to be good, I need to be the best, you know? And so I would try and use guilt to motivate myself to do better. Like, oh, I'm not the best I could be. And so, you know, I kind of beat myself up for that and try and use guilt and shame to like motivate me to get to the top level, you know? And so it was that love solve session with Christine and working through the wells. And when we
Mhm.
got to the guilt well, it was like, like the floodgates open. I just like
That's
sobbed and
great.
sobbed and sobbed and wrote like pages of all the things I felt guilty for and, you know,
Mm.
all the ways I felt I wasn't good enough. And anyway, so that was a huge breakthrough. And so I think what I have learned from those experiences and coming to this one that made me because I basically just wouldn't let myself invest in myself because I didn't really trust my judgment anymore. That's something that has like come up recently that I didn't realize was an issue. And basically, my angels had been telling me for a little while that there's kind of a curriculum for whichever way I wanted to go. I have a lot of tools now, so I can keep going down that path, and I can just use what I already have and go down that path, or I can invest in myself and go down that path. There's no right or wrong. And my angels had already told me, let us take care of this. So I had already gotten that answer that like everything's going to be okay financially. And I'm just turning it over to them. And so then I had these decisions to make with some different opportunities to invest in myself. And my initial is like, well, the money's not in the account. So no. But I just kept getting, they kept telling me, like, you can choose whatever you want. It may not all work out perfectly right off the bat, and that money may not show up right when I expect it to show up. But I've turned that over to my angels, so I'm not worried about it. Like, I couldn't in my wildest dreams imagine or think up or even know to ask for what they have in store for me.